Hi, everybody. This is Jen from the SSP team. I help SSP with their blog and social media. We are so super excited and thankful to have you here in celebration of both Father's Day and Pride Month. And we have a very dear and close friend of both Mateo and Dr. Cow. Garon Wade is here today to speak with us. Garon just recently published his memoir, You'll Always Be White to Me, which deals with issues such as adoption, racism, homophobia, and personal heartache. And as one reader says, it's an authentic example of how to take control of your life and be your own champion. Another reader shares, Garon leads us through a lifetime of adventure, relationships, lessons, and gratitude. His memoir shows us that with love, it is possible to save lives, heal heartache, make a home across the world, fulfill our dreams, and create a family of our own design. Engaging story told with the cadence and charm of a natural storyteller. Thank you again for joining us here today. We'd love to ask you questions about your book and dive a bit further into your adoption experience.
Thank you so much for having me. It's nice to meet you virtually.
It's so nice to meet you. So first, to start off, what prompted you to write the book?
You know, it's sort of taken many phases, I would say. In my 20s, a lot of people suggested that I write my story because I did grow up in a very different way. But I felt like I was too young, you know? Like, who wants to read a memoir by someone in their 20s? So for so many years, I just kind of forgot about it, honestly. And I, tried to accomplish things in my career and in terms of adopting my children. And about the time that Colin Kaepernick became every headline in the United States, I started to sort of think about what it meant to be a brown or black guy raised by white parents. Because the one thing that shocked me the most out of all of the coverage about him was that almost nowhere did anyone mention that he has white parents. And I thought it's such an interesting, it's such a different perspective when you're raised by white parents, but you're living your life as a brown or black person. It really is like an entirely different thing, experience. And so I started to think about, that side of my story. And that's sort of where the beginnings of it happened. In my ear, I had my husband always saying, you need to write your memoir. You need to write your memoir. And I was like, dude, I'm so busy. We have kids and we have careers and all this stuff. So actually in 2020, we flew to South Africa. We completed a 4-year adoption of our son, Emmanuel. And when we arrived back from South Africa in March, we of course landed in pandemic, right? And I was off from work and I was sitting at home with my kids. And again, my husband came to me and he said, Garon, if you don't write this memoir now, you will never write this memoir. So I said, fuck, I hate it when he's right, And so I did. I sat down and once I started, there it was. It was like 10 hours a day for 3 months.
Wow. It was like the gift of time that you never would have had otherwise. Something positive that came out of the pandemic for you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how else do you do that when you're raising children and you both have careers,
Exactly. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So this book, it narrates an incredible journey. It takes us through racism, growing up brown while LGBT, losing your mother at a young age, adopting your children and finding love. Yeah. What did you discover about yourself as you were writing the book?
That's a great question. I think I realized how therapeutic it was without ever intending for it to be that, to have the chance to really sit down and go through your life and go through 10 plus countries, people I loved, things and people and places I lost. I think in the regular stream of life, you don't have that time to really think about it at length. And as I was writing it, I, revisited so many great things and hard things, both. And I realized how cathartic it was in a way, to just write about it, to get it out for myself. I mean, no one else was there, just me and like a computer, but just to put it all out on paper, it felt really amazing.
I can imagine. And also when you're, in the book several times, it seemed like you were in the right place, just at the right time. And people seem to open up doors for you for your next chapter. One example being Donovan at the DC Tower. In other instances, life was very rough, and several times you were discriminated against because of what you look like. And what's your take on how life works now that you've been able to reflect on all of this?
Well, how life works. I mean, that's such an interesting, I just think we're all here for such a short time, and we don't really know what paths our life are going to take. I'm not a person I'm not religious, and I don't believe in destiny, but I do believe in the sort of cause and effect of the here and now, just where you happen to be on a given day and the people that you were interacting with. And, it's just that sort of truth that if you just are kind to people and you interact in an authentic way with people that you're around and treat people well, you just honestly never know, who's going to be your friend or who's going to open a door or who's going to remember you for something that you never would have thought you'd be remembered for. That's how I choose to live my life. That's why I try to live my life. And I think in certain instances it has, as you said, it's like open doors that I just can't even imagine were opened. Yeah. Especially having lived in situations that were, difficult in my life. I think when you see both of it, you see both sides, you realize that really is what life is. A lot of hardship, a lot of great stuff, and just all of us trying to navigate through it, right?
It's a fantastic attitude. So in the book, your own white American grandma tells you that she loves you, but she used racist remarks about brown-skinned people or the Asian community in front of you and while talking to you. What was it like for you to grow up dealing with this, and how did you overcome it, or are you still working on overcoming it?
I'm good. You know what I mean? For me in my life, I'm good. I think as a young boy, it was hard because I think just when you felt you were loved, you realized that you were also other. And I think when you're growing up in a family where you don't look like other people, my parents were like really all love, and those people who have read the memoir or will read the memoir will realize how, I just had this beautiful family. But when it came down to leaving Africa or Europe or the Middle East and traveling to their small home in South Louisiana to my grandparents' house, it was different. They absolutely loved me. They also absolutely were racist. And so I think for me in writing the memoir, the exploration there for the reader is like, how do you juggle those two things? How do you balance being a grandparent who loves your brown grandchildren and yet is absolutely racist? And that was the fascinating part of all of it to me as I reflected, like, how did these two worlds come together? Like, how did we constantly for 18 years live between these two worlds? I just hope it gets better for the next generation. I hope that I hope this conversation is not a question that someone sitting in your position will ask in another generation. I hope it's just not, Yeah. There's a lot of work to be done.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of your grandma, she herself went on an amazing journey of self-discovery while dealing with you being true to yourself and building your own family.
Right.
You dig deep inside yourself. What do you believe was the event that changed everything in your grandma's perception of things?
Strangely enough, I think it was us adopting our first son, Mateo, who was adopted from the Maryland and DC area. It's that sort of classic thing that I think that people can find it within themselves to discriminate against a couple. But when faced with discriminating against a child, it's a harder thing, And once we had Mateo, I think she just saw us as a family. She didn't quite get it. She didn't really understand it, but she fell in love with the baby, and that opened a door to us having a relationship as an adult. It's strange to me, of course, because I don't see the world through that lens, but you can imagine a woman that had grown up in Texas and Louisiana right after the Great Depression, never having seen Black and brown people in her immediate circle, never having been friends with gay people. I think this was like an entirely different world for her, Yeah.
You have such a sense of compassion and understanding for those that, have different viewpoints, and it's refreshing. I don't hear anger in your voice. I don't sense anything like that.
when you live around the world as I did, what you see is that people are people are people. They want the same things, on a very basic level. They want access to resources. They want safety for their children. They want access to healthcare for their families. They want to be able to just like live a life that allows them to sort of pursue endeavors and at a reasonable level. Some people aren't even dreaming out there. They're just trying to live, right, to make it from day to day. And whether I was in the Middle East or at the bottom of Africa or in Europe or wherever, I mean, I think that you see racism, you see prejudice in all forms, towards women, towards gay people, towards people with disabilities in the United States, towards the Native American population. This list goes on and on. And I don't harbor like anger, because I feel like I just wanted to change. And I think specifically in my family, we made changes. It was, and that's the point of the book. Like, change, it's possible. It may be rough, and love can be very complicated, but it's possible. I think when we turn our backs to each other and just say, like, I'm not talking to you anymore, to some degree, nothing ever gets solved, Yeah.
So good. And so who do you think should read your book?
Well,
how do you answer that?
Yeah, who should read it? Well, it's like as soon as I read it, and as soon as I have it right here, like when I saw it the first time, and I was kind of like looking at it, I was thinking, where is this going to go? And I guess I feel like no book is for everybody. That's just the truth. There's not a single book in the world that everybody should read. That's not a fact. But I think for this book, I really feel people who enjoy global adventures, who want to go like to 15 plus countries, I believe it is, and dive into those cultures. And that's one, that's a reader that would love it. I also think that anybody that like family, people that enjoy stories about whether it's a dysfunctional family, of which there is plenty in here, or the aspects of a loving family. I love films and books about dysfunctional families. Like I can think of like The Family Stone, or anything Noah Baumbach produced, like The Squid and the Whale or Margot at the Wedding. I'm such a fan because I think those complicated dynamics are true in all of our lives. Like every family has something, And so if you enjoy like family stories that are interesting and difficult, and I think this could be a great book for people out there.
Agree. Now kind of switching topics or moving on to the next part here. In celebration of Pride and Father's Day, we'd love to learn more about your adoption journey, which you spoke a little bit about. How would you describe it, and were there obstacles you faced that you think were more unique to the LGBT experience?
So no, I don't think that any obstacles that we faced were because we were a gay couple. I think that we arrived at a very specific time in 2012, a really specific time in the United States, where it's like equality was being legislated essentially. And we lived in DC, and at the time DC had very equal rules, very equal laws around gay couples adopting and straight couples adopting. So for us, no, I think it was the same as if a straight couple adopted. In terms of South Africa, my husband and I are the first gay married couple from the United States that were able to adopt from South Africa. Wow. And so that was, we didn't really know what to expect, but I had lived there and I had sort of followed the culture over many years in the country. And I felt strongly, South Africa got marriage equality well before the United States did. So to some degree, I had a good amount of faith that this would be, a great thing, and possibly would face very little obstacles. So I don't, and it was great. Actually, in South Africa, the crazy thing is the four of us would be walking around town and have these African men in the mall or in a market, wherever, scream out things like, "You guys are power dads," or "We love your family." And it was fascinating. Like that doesn't even happen in America, Wow. Like you guys are really like showing us a lot of love here. So I think we were lucky to come at a time when this was all possible. When you ask that question, what I think of many gay men and women who are older than me, who meet our family and say, "I would have loved to have a kid," but it just wasn't possible for so long in this country and many countries, still true. And I don't know, my heart goes out to them, because I know what that feels like to want to be a parent. I mean, I wanted to be a parent since I was a kid. So to know that I actually arrived at a time when that was possible, it's just, it means a lot to me.
It's incredible. So the adoption process wasn't as challenging as you might. Was your expectations what it ended up being, or was your experience different than what your expectations were going in?
Well, in DC, and this is remarkable, we had after we did all our paperwork and signed with an adoption agency, we had a 3-week adoption. We got our son in 3 weeks, which I have still never heard anybody with that time frame. No. On the flip side, for our second son, it took 4 years. 4 years of the South African government, to some degree, I feel not being as efficient as it could have been, and maybe the process not being as streamlined as possible. But so yes, that 4 year really that did a number on us, and that I hope that's for parents that are out there thinking about it, beyond the trials and tribulations, I guess, of adoption. To some degree, it's hard, emotionally to hold that hope for 4 years and not know if it's going to come true. That was rough. But I always say that we had a great first adoption, so I have nothing to complain about, really. I'm sure there's many families who had a rough first adoption. So yeah. Again,
your positivity is amazing. We all need to learn a little from you, and it's really remarkable.
Thank you.
So there continues to be this lingering issue of a culture, permeated with the belief that children need the complementary and distinct roles of mother and fathers, right? And why do you think this way of thinking still exists? And why is there such, still this strong opposition to gay adoption that lingers in the United States?
Well, to me, I've never understood it. I mean, I've always said if I was straight, I feel like I would be the biggest proponent of gay people because I don't understand the discrimination factor. I mean, in terms of a family, I think we all know people who are raised by their grandparent or their grandparent and their mother or their father and his parents, or, I mean, there's so many combinations. Somehow when we get to sexuality, it's that's what people are thinking of, which also is so surprising to me because I always say when I meet a straight couple, I'm not hey, nice to meet you. And then I'm not thinking about them having sex. That's just never a thing. I'm thinking about who they are as people. And I wish that when people met gay couples, they would not, why that's a factor, I'm not sure. One thing I will say on a more serious note is with our kids, we try to buy books for them where they are exposed to children and people that they otherwise would not be exposed to, so that they are seeing a different way of life. So we do this thing each night called Reading Corner, where we all sit around together and we read for 25 minutes. And I think that's so important. I do wonder how many straight families have their kids reading books about gay families, or how many white parents are showing their kids books about Black families, or how many families like mine are teaching your kids about the Native American culture and communities around the country. I feel like if we all did that, let's take this into disabilities as well. I feel like if we all tried to do a bit more of that, we would all be so much more exposed. But honestly, I think that the truth is, when you ask why has this continued to perpetuate for so long, it's because of exposure. People are so locked into their own communities and have very little visibility out, and therefore you don't need to form a different opinion. I mean, it's sort of self-perpetuating unless you make an active change.
Absolutely. We do the same in our house. Or I try to do the same. And it's so important. It starts when they're, babies, when they're small, and, it's all about exposure, like you said.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about this right now, but what else needs to change so we can open up the process to more loving homes of gay parents? What do you think needs to change to make it a little bit easier?
Do you mean for parents to be able to adopt, or?
Yes.
Well, while I'm very supportive of the kind of paperwork processes that it takes to adopt the first time, because anyone that's been through it will there's FBI checks, there's local state police checks, there's professional references, personal references. I mean, the list goes on and on. One thing I think could really help the system is if they figured out a database for families that have already adopted and been cleared to then be documented, so that when they go to do it a second time, they're not starting over. That to me is the biggest failing that I see in that kind of route, because many families that adopt go and adopt again, but the second time they're like starting as if they never did it, and you're going through all these checks, and meanwhile children are sitting in orphanages or in foster care just waiting for a family, and like you cut that time out. I think you can accelerate all of this in a responsible way, and yet a faster way.
Right. And do you have any additional words of encouragement? You've already offered so many words of encouragement, but anything else to say to those LGBT couples who are looking to adopt? Anything else you'd like to tell them?
Yeah, it's hard, but it's so rewarding too. It's sort of like you can't even imagine the love that brings, to your home, to your life. And when it gets tough, when you're going through the paperwork and they're asking for more and more documents, or when the wait gets really long, just remember that on the other side of that kid is going to change your life in a huge way, and you are going to change their life in a huge way. To some degree, there is this, I've heard it many times in the adoption community, there's this kind of idea that anyone that says that an adopted kid is lucky, that's frowned upon, discouraged, etc. I understand where it comes from, but as I think I can speak well on this topic, given that I am an adopted kid and that I'm an adoptive parent, I think it goes both ways. You're lucky to find each other, because both the players in that situation matter hugely. And I think I'll probably get a lot of pushback for this, honestly, but I think as a kid who was adopted and a parent and as a person who has adopted twice, both domestically and internationally, it's absolutely, both sides of that story are really lucky to have each other. I certainly feel that. I feel so lucky to have been adopted. Because I was adopted, I was left on the steps of a hospital during a war in Sri Lanka, and who knows what would have happened to me. And on the flip side, my son sat in an orphanage for 2.5 years, and I'm so happy that he ended up in our home. So yeah, if you feel like you can do it and you want to do it, go for it. It'll change your life.
Thank you so much. Beautiful words. And just want to ask one last question here before we end the interview. Please. How are you celebrating Pride as a family? Are you guys doing anything special to celebrate Pride this month?
Well, I wish I could say absolutely. Here's the thing: is we live in a very gay-friendly city in Lauderdale, and I feel like it is, to some degree, there's celebration throughout the year at different times. Like even Halloween here is like Pride in a way. When you go to the gay beach, it's like there's pride flags everywhere. So I probably should be more intentional about it. I haven't really given it a lot of thought. I have a lot of great friends who are doing giant parties, or they're traveling to other prides. We kind of do it throughout the year. Honestly, we don't kind of wait for this one moment. I just more about books, but I just bought a book the other day called Families Can, and it's about all sorts of different families, and it includes gay dads and lesbian mothers and just everything, grandparents, kind of what we were just talking about. And I read that to my kids at night, and we talk about it. And that for us, it's Pride isn't just a once a year thing. It's sort of we try to wrap it into everything. So yeah, I don't know. I am excited though. It does feel a little different this year with not having the access to travel everywhere, and because of COVID, I think it's kind of dampened it. But I'm super excited to watch it unfold, and I love the Vice President Kamala Harris was at Pride in DC the other day. I loved seeing that, and President Joe Biden, you posted something about Pride in the gay community. I mean, after 4 years of, let's just say, hell, it was so nice to see, so nice to have the government be back in everyone's corner. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And everyone, this is Garon Wade. His book is You'll Always Be White to Me. And it's available on Amazon. And you definitely need to pick up a copy. And we'll also share the link on our social page.
Hey, Jen, thank you so much. Those were excellent questions. I seriously really appreciate it. Very, very.
Well, thank you.
I've been doing a press little circuit, right? And so it's just interesting to see what different interviewers ask, and these were excellent questions. Thank you so much.
You're excellent, and it was such a thrill to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.